What's up, guys? Welcome to today's show. We're talking about competing against yourself. And I personally love this topic because growing up as an athlete, I was always extremely competitive. It still gets the best and the worst of me at times. But I'm sure many people listening have experienced some of that same competitive drive. A lot of people listening, I'm sure, have grown up as athletes competing in sport, competing in music or school or business or test scores, all those things. It's gonna look different person to person, but competition has this powerful ability to really bring out the best in us if we allow it to. And for many people striving to improve, a friendly dose of competition can help push you to new levels that you might not have been able to achieve on your own. And competition, it does that. If you've been in sport, if you've been in the heat of a moment, you're probably going to push yourself a little harder than you might have otherwise. And like I said, many of you listening have probably competed at some level or another, some probably very competitively and some, just recreationally. But even in those cases, you you can get to the point where you can use that as fuel. You can use that as help to be a part of your growth journey. And when it comes to competing, the problem is that we let so much of that happen externally. When you think about all the times where you've maybe competed in the past, and think about if it's in a sport, you're letting the competition drive you to a higher level. If you're comparing yourself to someone else, you're letting external circumstances and scores and those things do that. But today I want to talk about how to compete internally. So a way that is accessible to anyone wherever they're at, and a way to help create this shift in your mindset to help you elevate your health, your mindset, your life, whatever your goals are. This can be one of the ways that can do it. And like I was saying, the problem is that many of us don't have the awareness or the drive to compete against ourselves, to compete internally, to connect to that deeper why, that deeper reason you're doing it, and to compete against yourself. Many of us wait for outside pressures. Many of us wait for deadlines. Many of us wait for people to ask us instead of asking them for requests. We wait for motivation to strike. We wait for these different things externally to happen. When in reality, we can set up some systems in our lives that can help to create that same competition without having to rely on external things or wait for external things. Because the problem with waiting for external things is that you don't know when it's going to strike. You don't know when motivation is going to strike. You don't know when you'll be in a situation where you can compete. And it might not even, those situations might not even align with the actual goals that you're working towards. And I know this can be tough because some people either don't like competition. I know competition can have some bad memories around it, some bad things, and a lot of people don't like to necessarily push themselves or compete against themselves. People don't like to keep score and do those things because some people are not naturally competitive. And for the guys listening out there that are the type A competitive types, the ones that want to win at all costs, you guys are probably like, oh yeah, I'm totally bought into this. But for even the ones that aren't naturally that way, I want you to hang with me, and I want to talk about some strategies that you can use to apply to start to compete against yourself and take away maybe some of the bad imagery that might be around it. And I've personally run into this many times, and I currently use physical things to push my mental, physical challenges, physical things, because through sports, that's always where it's come from me. And I really realized this was an issue maybe a few years ago because I always had athletics growing up, playing football, playing baseball, playing football through college. There was always plenty of competition in the weight room, on the field, you name it, in the lunchroom, who can eat the most. There's competition all over the place, and everything turned into a competition. And when you always are surrounded by that externally, I think that almost becomes normal. It becomes something that you do, and you don't have to really think twice about it. You don't have to train about it. You're trying to raise your game so that you can beat the next guy. But the problem that I ran into was going into, we moved out west, went into business for myself. As a sole proprietor at first. That was all of a sudden all of these external competitions were no longer there. All of a sudden it was me and my mind and myself. And I was lacking the ability to have any of those external measuring sticks or those things that drive me. So kind of got a little, it's easy to get complacent in those situations. If you're not keeping score, if you're not measuring and competing, even if it's against yourself, if you find yourself in that situation, I urge you to kind of start to rewrite the way that you're looking at things, because I did this, and I have some mental things that I do, some daily habits, some things that I compete against myself with in terms of just sticking to habits, making sure to try to string together as many days of positive habits as I can in a row for a certain thing. Physically, I use things. There's different benchmark workouts or movements or things that I'll regularly check and regularly do, whether that's, excuse me, lifting, running related. Like for this year, some of you know that the goal that I set out was a sub 20-minute 5K, which that on its own is very hard for me. But I also, knowing me, didn't want to make it too easy. So sub 20-minute 5K with a 2 times body weight squat and deadlift in the same week. And that kind of upped the ante a little bit, because I couldn't just focus on the endurance stuff. I still had to keep my strength while doing that. But those types of things create a very clear game for me. Excuse me. Create a very clear game for me. And it allows me to know, am I winning? Am I improving? Am I doing well at the game, or am I not? Because if I don't set those things, and if I just say, I'd like to get stronger this year and I'd like to run faster. Well, if I get 10 seconds faster on a 5K, and if I add 10 pounds to my back squat, technically I'm faster and I'm stronger, but am I really winning at the game I want to? And am I progressing the way that I want to? So let's talk the actionable here. Let's talk things that you can be doing, five steps, if you will, 5 things you can be thinking about to really learn how to compete against yourself and use this skill as a way to propel your progress forward. First thing, choose the game you're playing. This is so important, because most people don't even know what game they're in. They don't even know what sport they're in. They don't know what they're competing in. What are you actually trying to improve in? Is this a physical goal? Is it a work goal, a relationship goal? What things are you trying to do, and how can you challenge yourself physically and mentally in these things? I use the example for myself of a speed and a strength goal, a 5K goal and a strength goal for me, because I knew that achieving those physical goals required me to push myself mentally, required me to be disciplined in other areas. I can't let nutrition slack. I have to be getting good recovery, good sleep. So those things create a lot of overflow into other areas. So that was a goal on the personal side of things that allowed me to know the game I was competing in and be able to know that I was going to, if I achieve that goal, that I'm positively moving forward to the person that I want to be. So you have to know what that is for you. It's going to be different for person to person, and it's going to even be different in whatever season of life you're in. So if you're, you might be in a season where it's a financial thing or a fitness thing and a health thing. It might be where, it's more about investing back into relationships. And that's going to depend on where you're at. But first off, you have to identify the game. Second thing, make sure to keep score. And I love the episode. We done this way back, episode 3, one of the first episodes with Dr. Tim Losby. Was a very fun episode. And he talks a lot about keeping score. And there's some different analogies and examples that he uses in there. If you guys want to deep dive into it, I recommend going back to that. That was episode 3. But basically, you need to know, how do you know if you're winning, and how do you know if you're improving? And keeping score is really the only way to do that. And we can use fitness, because that's an easy example. If you're not tracking your workouts, if you're not seeing how you're improving, tracking numbers, whether that's written down, whether you need to make note of that somewhere, use an app or a software, you need to know if you're winning or if you're improving. Like I said in the earlier example, simply just knowing, I want to get better. Am I getting better? What does that mean? I think we need some objective measurements on that. Score is not, when we look at sports as an example, you don't watch a game and then say, well, that team looked better. They seem more, I think they did better. we got to take some of the subjectivity out of it. And I think there's importance in knowing how we feel subjectively. I think there's a lot of importance in that. But I also think if we want to start competing with ourselves, we need to have objective measures. Let's use you're trying to do, let's use a mile run as an example. You want to run under a 7-minute mile. That's a very objective, in your face type of measurement that you can't really hide around. It's either you did it or you didn't. And I think by keeping score like that, then the outcome can be very clear. Did I get there? Did I not? And you can also know the process along the way of, am I improving? If you go from running a 7:20 to a 7:15, then those are steps in the right direction. If it's going the other way, then that's not something to beat yourself up about, but you can start to then peel back and say, why am I not making progress in the way I want to? Why am I taking these steps back? And you can start to have a process in place then to improve on that. So third thing, want to make sure you're competing in practice and on game day. This is something that I think the game day piece gets overhyped. People want to focus too much on game day. People want to focus on testing their 1 rep max, on maxing out their mile or their 5K or their half marathon or marathon, or people want to focus on, the big event, the big thing, which is great. I'm all for that. Show up on game day. We want people to show up on those days, but people overlook the importance of competing in practice. And this was something back to football days. Is for me, it was very important to not just show up on game day. I didn't think, I didn't want to be one of those guys who just showed up on Saturday mornings and, competed and then, kind of went about their business during the week. And we had some guys like that, and they were great players. But for me, practice is where you refine your skill. Practice is where you push yourself, where you really grow mentally, where you really make the positive change, because we're practicing a lot more than we're playing on game day for most people. And those things, when no one's watching, are you doing those reps correctly? Are you pushing yourself? Are you taking the time to intentionally do that and intentionally improve? And finding ways to do that in your practice. Let's use a workout, for example, is not skipping reps if you're trying to do that, not skipping movements, not avoiding movements that maybe you don't like. I've been guilty of that. And making sure the quality of all your reps are really clean or really pure, making sure that you're not just going through the motions. And that might be something subjective, but there's objective things you can put on that as well. And there's different things you can measure and different ways you can implement that, but make sure that you're not just competing on game day. Fourth thing, make it personal. Don't let up and don't make excuses. When you find a goal that's important to you, and that can be, whatever your goal is, if that's important to you, don't let up. Don't give yourself slack. Don't make excuses. I think that's it's a tough thing to face, but I feel like a lot of guys out there that I've talked to have kind of lost their physical and their mental edge back from being days of being athletes and being these things. There's, this edge that's kind of slowly over time just gotten worn down or faded away. And people get too complacent. If something's really important to you and you're letting yourself off the hook time and time again, and you're wondering why you're not at the level you want to be at, I think that's something that you need to raise your standard a little bit. You need to elevate your game, elevate how you're showing up for yourself. Because these things are, when things are going on, when you're in a competition, everyone's watching, everyone can see it. Everyone knows how you do. But internally, when we're talking practice, we're talking the day in, day out habits that you're showing up with. Don't let up on those. Keep going with them. Make it personal with yourself. This is something that if no one's holding you accountable, at the end of the day, you're the only one that can hold yourself accountable. So make sure that you're sticking to it. If that's important to you, don't make excuses. Don't be like, oh, well, the time wasn't right, or economy wasn't right, or, it's really not a good time with the holidays coming up. Stick to it. You owe it to yourself. Last thing here, fifth thing, if you need help, make it public. And this is something that I don't encourage for everyone. I don't think everyone has to go out and, share what they're doing. But if you really need a little extra accountability, make it public. That can help give you a little extra accountability. Now, don't rely heavily on that. Making it public is just giving you a little extra, think of it as like a little extra boost to help make sure you're staying on track with that, because when you make it public, there's a little more pressure. You can't just change the goal. If like I made it intentional that I said, hey, I told people what my goal was for this year. And I don't know if I'm completely on track for it, but everyone knows that I have this goal by the end of the year. And if I didn't have that, it's easy for me to be like, well, maybe by next March I can do that. I haven't really gotten the time to train on the running side of things I wanted to, but that boost of making it public, you still have to show up to yourself. You still have to show up on practice. You still have to show up for game day, but making it public can help give you that extra boost. So guys, I hope this was helpful. I hope you can find the importance of competing against yourself. I hope you can find an area of your life where you need it the most. And for a lot of people, I've just found physical challenges. And this doesn't mean beating yourself up into the ground. This just means something physically that's gonna push yourself to improve. You'll find out that will help you improve physically and mentally in most cases. So find something you can compete against yourself with. I'm talking later this week on some Keystone Habits, so stay tuned for that one. That's going to tie in really closely with this one as well, because finding those habits in the select areas are where you want to really dial in that competition. So just imagine being able to get back to that competitive spirit, get back to those days where you enjoyed pushing it. And you don't need external help to do that. You can do that internally. You can do that from within. So I hope you guys can try that. And I hope you guys find this helpful and take it, run with it, apply it, and go compete with yourself. Now, if you guys are looking to take your health to the next level, if you're looking for a little more guidance in what I call the 5 foundations of health, make sure to check out the free download I put together. It's called the High Performance Health Starter Kit. The link is there in the show notes for you. It talks about the 5 foundations through health and forming healthy habits across those areas. And then, like I've been mentioning the past couple of weeks, if you guys are listening, if you're enjoying the show, I would love to hear from you. We don't get to hear, or we don't know exactly who's listening. We see numbers, but we don't see people. We can't connect it with people. So if you're listening to the show, if you're enjoying it, if you're finding it helpful, my email and Instagram tag are both in the show notes there as well. Would love to hear a quick note from you, hear what's going well, what you enjoy, anything you want to see more of. Would love to connect with you guys. So thanks for listening in today. Looking forward to talking with you guys more this week. We got some good topics coming up. And as always, reach out if you guys need anything and keep working at it. We'll talk to you soon.